Hey guys, tonight we begin a journey into the distant past, to a time when survival meant waking up to frozen winds whipping across endless plains of ice and snow. Imagine opening your eyes to a world where the first breath of morning stings, like tiny needles against your cheeks, where every muscle aches from the cold, and where the fire, if it hasn't died in the night, is your clan's only shield against the brutal dawn. The horizon glimmers, pale frost clings to the hides that serve as blankets, and the faint crackle of embers is the difference between life and death. I think you'd last 3 seconds there before running for your life. But for early humans, there was no escape. This was their daily reality. Support us by liking this video and subscribing so we can keep bringing you calm, comforting stories every night. Now close your eyes, listen closely, and let this gentle story ease you into a peaceful slumber. And if you'd like, share your current feelings or even your worries in the comments. Sometimes just writing them down helps release them, makes the night a little easier, and reminds us that we are not alone. Maybe pull a blanket a little tighter around you. Listen to the quiet sounds of your room and prepare to drift peacefully into our tale. The frozen dawn settles over a small group huddled in the shelter of a rock overhang. Breath rises like smoke, each exhale a whisper of heat, stolen instantly by the icy air. They stir slowly, reluctant to leave the fragile warmth of animal hides. But the fire needs feeding. One ember glowing faintly in the ash is carefully coaxed with dry grasses. A spark catches flames leap, and once again humanity holds its fragile flame against the cold. This mastery over fire, though still uncertain, is no small feat. Archaeologists believe that control of fire dates back hundreds of thousands of years, though there's still debate about whether it was Homo erectus or later Neanderthals, who first kept embers alive through long, harsh nights. One controversial question remains: was fire discovered by accident again and again, or was knowledge passed carefully, a treasured secret between generations? Around the camp, children shiver awake. Their hair is wild, their faces smudged with soot, and their tiny feet seek warmth near the fire's glow. Mothers press them close, sharing body heat. Men, broad-shouldered and weary-eyed, rise with grunts. The hunt calls even in the cold. Spears tipped with chipped flint lean against the wall of stone. They will soon be gripped by numbed fingers and carried into a landscape where mammoths roam, wolves howl, and survival is never certain. The cold is merciless. Fingers stiffen quickly, lips crack, and eyes stream from the biting wind. Yet early humans find ways to fight back. They wrap themselves in furs stitched crudely with sinew and smear animal fat across exposed skin to block the cold. It's not fashion, it's survival couture. Honestly, if someone wore that to a modern runway, the designer would probably win awards for primitive chic. But back then, no one cared about the look, only whether it kept frostbite away. Still, danger creeps from every corner. A crack in the ice could send a hunter plunging into frozen waters. A storm could trap a clan for days, food dwindling to nothing. Yet despite these terrors, there are moments of odd comfort. The hiss of firewood, the warmth of huddled bodies, the rhythm of footsteps crunching in snow. These are the lullabies of survival. Scholars point out that one quirky trick of endurance may have been laughter. Yes, even in the Ice Age, humor could lighten hearts. Imagine a hunter tripping on his own oversized fur boots and landing in a snowdrift. Others would chuckle a brief spark of joy against the bleakness. Was humor another survival tool? Perhaps. After all, keeping spirits alive was just as vital as keeping fires burning. And so, the frozen dawn is both enemy and teacher. It shows early humans how fragile they are, yet how inventive they must become. They learn to breathe shallowly in the cold, to huddle in circles that share warmth, to cherish every glowing ember as if it were gold. It is only the beginning of their journey, a harsh reminder that in this world, survival demands not just strength, but cleverness, cooperation, and a will to endure when the cold whispers for them to surrender. The hunger comes in waves gnawing deep in the bellies of the clan as they rise from their icy bedding. The fire still crackles faintly, warming their bodies, but it does nothing for the emptiness inside. Food, precious, scarce, always fleeting, is the greatest challenge of their lives. Every day begins with the question, what will we eat and how far must we go to find it? The hunters strap their crude flint-tipped spears across their shoulders and trudge into the pale light of morning. Their footsteps crunch against the snow breath pluming in clouds. Behind them, children peer out anxiously, knowing that failure to bring back meat means another day of chewing roots, nuts, and whatever scraps of dried berries were saved from warmer months. The clan's survival dances precariously on the outcome of each hunt. Early humans were opportunists by necessity. Archaeologists remind us that while they dreamed of feasts of mammoth or bison, their reality was often more humble, bone marrow, sucked from carcasses, abandoned by other predators. Tiny hares trapped with clever snares, bitter tubers dug from frozen ground. One quirky fact is that some groups are thought to have eaten insects in bulk grubs, beetles, and termites. Imagine being handed a crunchy handful of bugs for dinner. I can already hear you muttering, "Nope, I'll stick with pizza, thanks." But for them, it was protein, and protein meant life. The hunters stalk through the frostbitten woods, eyes scanning for tracks. A faint trail of deer scat sparks hope. They follow it silently, every sense alive. Hunger sharpens the mind, makes the body move with stealth, born of desperation. A snapped twig, a sudden shift of wind, and the opportunity could vanish. Failure is not just disappointing, it's deadly. Back at camp, the women and children forage what little they can. Bark is stripped from trees, not for eating, but for scraping off lichen, a poor man's breakfast that leaves a bitter taste. Some scrape snow to melt for water, while others chew old leather thongs to soften their stomach's growls. Every small act is survival in disguise. One controversial question remains: did early humans survive more on hunting, or did foraging actually provide the bulk of their diet? Scholars argue endlessly. The truth may be that survival relied on balanced meat, when possible plants when available, and anything else in between. And though mammoth hunts capture our imagination, it might have been humble berries and roots that quietly sustained humanity through the harshest winters. There are moments of near despair. A returning hunting party with empty hands means silence settles heavy over camp. The children's eyes dim. Mothers press their lips tight to hide their worry, and elders look into the fire as though searching for answers in its flickering depths. Hunger has a way of making the body weak and the spirit heavy. It also sparks conflict arguments over who should eat first, whether the strong should be fed before the weak, to ensure the group's survival. Yet somehow endurance wins. Perhaps it is the clever use of dried meat stored in smoke-darkened pouches, or perhaps it is luck a hare darting foolishly into the path of a child stone. When food appears, no matter how small, the camp comes alive again. Fires are stoked, higher laughter erupts, and the clan tears into their meal with hands slick from fat and faces glowing with relief. Even if it is only a meager rabbit, the joy is immense. Scholars suggest that scarcity shaped not only diets, but also minds. Hunger forced creativity, stone tools refined for slicing meat baskets, woven tighter to hold gathered nuts, secret knowledge of edible plants passed carefully down through generations. One might even say hunger was the greatest teacher of innovation. Without it, maybe humans wouldn't have stretched so far, learned so much, or dreamed of better. And always the children remember. Their bellies ache, but they watch closely, memorizing which roots are dug, how traps are set, which tracks lead to food. Knowledge is stored like seeds for the future, ensuring that when their time comes, they too can stave off starvation for another day. So the clan moves through hunger, never fully fed, always chasing the next meal. The gnawing emptiness becomes as constant as the cold, shaping them, hardening them, but also binding them together in the shared struggle of survival. The clan soon learns that bare hands and desperate willpower are not enough. To face the brutal world around them, early humans turn to what their minds can shape: tools. In the flickering light of a fire, sharp stone flakes gleam like stars, each one chipped with painstaking patience from a larger core. Crude at first, little more than jagged edges, these stones slowly become lifelines, spear points, scrapers' knives. Each tool is a whisper of human ingenuity, the difference between starving or feasting between wounds and healing between prey and predator. Picture a hunter crouched over a piece of flint, hammerstone in hand. With each strike, sparks fly and shards scatter. The process is clumsy and dangerous. Cut fingers are almost guaranteed. And yet the result is miraculous, a sharp edge that can slice hide butcher meat or shave wood for fire. Honestly, if you tried it today, you'd probably end up bleeding before you managed a single useful flake. These people, however, mastered the skill through sheer necessity. One mainstream historical fact is that some of the earliest recognizable tools, known as the older one industry, date back over 2.5 million years. These were simple choppers and scrapers, not much to look at, but revolutionary at the time. Later, humans developed Acheulean hand axes, symmetrical and elegant, like the Swiss army knives of their age. Archaeologists debate endlessly whether these were purely functional, or if some were created as symbols of skill and status, kind of like showing off the latest iPhone, except your flex was a really nice rock. A quirky tidbit emerges from studies of ancient campsites. Some toolmakers seem to have a flair for design. Certain hand axes are so carefully crafted, it's hard to imagine they were only for butchering meat. Were they early expressions of art? Or perhaps a way to impress potential mates? Check out my perfectly symmetrical flint blade, darling. Want to share a mammoth steak romance Ice Age style? But tools weren't just about hunting big game. They allowed scraping hides to make clothing, carving wood to build shelters, or digging into frozen ground for roots. The sharpness of a flake could mean the difference between wearing animal skins and freezing bare. Tools became extensions of the body, like extra teeth or claws that nature forgot to give. One controversial question remains: did tool-making evolve gradually across groups, or did certain bands leap ahead and share their knowledge-spreading techniques like ancient influencers? Children gathered around to watch as elders shaped stone, the rhythmic tap, tap, tap becoming part of daily soundscapes. It was not just skill, but wisdom being passed down. And sometimes mistakes had consequences. A poorly fastened spear tip might shatter in a mammoth's hide, wasting the chance for food and risking the hunter's life. Every shard mattered, every edge was precious. The evolution of tools also changed how early humans thought. Crafting a hand axe required not only brute force, but also imagination, seeing a perfect blade hidden within a lump of rock. It meant planning ahead, anticipating problems, and shaping solutions. In a way, every chip of flint was also a chip away at the boundary between survival and civilization. Tools brought confidence, but they also brought new dangers. With sharper edges came sharper injuries. A deep cut could fester, turning into a death sentence without medicine. Yet even here, humans adapted. Some groups likely discovered that honey or herbs could soothe wounds, and they wrapped cuts with plant fibers, a primitive kind of bandage. And in the cold dawn, when hunters set out with spears balanced in their hands, those tools gave them something new hope. The icy plains and shadowed forest no longer seemed entirely impossible. A stone edge was enough to tip the scales, however slightly, in humanity's favor. Each tool was not just an object, but a promise that cleverness might conquer where muscle failed, and that in this unforgiving world, survival was no longer just a prayer, but a plan. Night descends, and with it comes the most primal of fears. The fire burns low, its glow flickering against stone walls and casting shadows that dance like restless spirits. Beyond the circle of light, the darkness feels alive, thick with unseen eyes and the heavy breath of predators. Early humans huddle close together, spears at hand, ears straining at every sound. A snapped twig, a rustle of leaves, the distant echoing growl that freezes blood in their veins. The great predators of the prehistoric world were not just a background danger. They were constant, immediate threats. Cave lions, saber-toothed cats, and packs of wolves prowled the same landscapes as humans, stronger, faster, and far more deadly. Imagine being 5 feet tall, armed only with a wooden spear, tipped with a flint blade, facing a saber-toothed cat with fangs longer than your hand. I don't know about you, but I'd be sprinting back to camp so fast I'd break a prehistoric record. Mainstream historical fact reminds us that Neanderthals and early Homo sapiens often competed with predators not only for food, but also for shelter. Evidence shows that some caves bear claw marks deeper than any human carving signs, that these were once lairs of lions or bears. Occupying such spaces meant ousting terrifying residents, sometimes successfully, sometimes at a terrible cost. Quirky tidbit, there's evidence that hyenas, notorious scavengers, sometimes dragged human remains into their dens. Archaeologists have uncovered gnawed bones that hint humans weren't always the hunters they were, sometimes the hunted. Imagine the humiliation of surviving a day of cold and hunger, only to end up as midnight snacks for spotted hyenas. Prehistoric life didn't exactly offer dignity at every turn. The clan strategy at night was vigilance. Fire became the weapon no claw could match. Flames were not only warmth, but barriers. Many predators hesitated at the edge of firelight, their eyes glowing in the dark, unwilling to step closer. Yet fire was fickle. Let it burn too low, and courage in the beasts surged back. One controversial question remains: did early humans intentionally design fire pits to scare predators? Or was that a lucky side effect they later learned to exploit? Guards were chosen, often the young and strong, to keep watch in turns. They sat near the flames, gripping spears, their ears twitching at every snap of the night. Sleep was fragmented, shallow, always interrupted. The clan lived in a cycle of brief rest and constant alertness. Imagine trying to get your 8 hours while a pack of wolves is circling your tent suddenly. That broken sleep you complain about doesn't sound so bad. Predator encounters shaped not only survival tactics, but also imagination. Shadows became stories, roars became warnings from spirits, and claw marks etched into memory became lessons for children. To a child sitting near the fire, the glowing eyes at the tree line weren't just animals. They were monsters, demons, forces of nature. Out of this fear perhaps came the seeds of myth and belief, the beginnings of seeing the world as more than flesh and bone. When danger did strike, the response was swift and desperate. Spears thrust forward, rocks hurled, voices raised in fierce cries. Sometimes the tactic worked. Predators backed away, unwilling to risk injury from stubborn humans. Other times, tragedy struck. A young hunter dragged off in the night a wounded elder, never returning. Every loss was carved into memory, teaching the clan that the night was never truly safe. And yet, for all the terror, there was also resilience. The clan learned to position their camps wisely against cliffs, in caves, or near rivers, where fewer beasts prowled. They learned to arrange sleeping circles with children in the center and adults forming a human shield. Even in their most fragile hours, they refused to surrender. So the night became a battleground of wills, predator against prey, fire against shadow, fear against endurance. Each sunrise was a small victory, proof that for one more day, humanity had held its fragile place in a world that wanted to erase it. The world is never still for long. Once the meager food supplies dwindle and the firewood runs low, the clan knows it is time to move. Nomadic footsteps press into frozen ground, marking the endless journey of early humans who rarely stayed in one place for more than a season. Their lives were built on constant migration, chasing herds, searching for fresh water, and avoiding the exhaustion of stripping one place bare. The morning begins with a flurry of quiet activity. Bundles of hide tools and precious embers wrapped in bark are gathered. Children stumble sleepily, clutching small possessions like shells or stones, the closest thing they have to toys. Elders move slowly, leaning on carved sticks. The pace is set by survival, not convenience. If they walk too slowly, hunger will overtake them. Too quickly, and the weak will collapse. It's a delicate balance, one that echoes the rhythm of human endurance. A mainstream historical fact is that nomadism defined most of prehistory. Before farming, humans lived as hunter-gatherers for tens of thousands of years, never putting down permanent roots. Camps were temporary, trails were seasonal, and their map of the world was made of memories where water ran in spring, where herds passed in autumn, where danger lurked in shadowed valleys. Quirky tidbits: some groups may have used natural landmarks like oddly shaped rocks or trees as prehistoric road signs. Imagine explaining directions by saying, "Turn left at the tree that looks like a bear, then keep walking until you hear the waterfall that sounds like laughter." It sounds silly, but in a world without compasses or maps, memory and imagination were the only GPS. The trail is grueling. Feet blister, shoulders ache under loads of hides and tools, and the cold gnaws at every exposed patch of skin. Yet the clan trudges forward step by step. The journey is not silent. Babies cry dogs if they were present at this early stage, bark or whine, and adults murmur encouragement or warnings. Predators often follow nomadic bands, hoping to pick off the weak. The movement itself becomes both shield and risk, safety in numbers, vulnerability in exhaustion. Sometimes fortune smiles. The clan stumbles upon a meadow where wild berries linger, or the tracks of a herd cross their path. Spirits lift, laughter cracks through the silence, and the promise of food keeps weary legs moving. Other times, fortune is cruel. Days pass with nothing but snow and barren trees. Bellies cramp from hunger, and every step feels like it might be the last. One controversial question remains: did groups ever split when resources ran out, choosing survival of some? Over the unity of all, scholars suspect it happened often, and such choices must have carved deep wounds in human memory. Nomadic life isn't just about physical endurance, it shapes the mind. Every child grows up learning to observe the land, to read the sky, to remember where rivers once flowed. The ability to recall and retell these details is survival. In fact, some anthropologists argue that storytelling itself may have evolved from the need to pass on migration routes. What began as we walked this way and found water eventually blossomed into myths and legends. In a way, every bedtime story traces its roots back to survival advice whispered beside the fire. There are brief moments of joy amid the endless trek. Children splash in streams, families gather wildflowers, or someone cracks a joke about how heavy their bundle feels. Humor becomes a walking companion lightening the burden. And in those moments, even exhaustion softens, replaced by the warmth of togetherness. Still, the journey never truly ends. The clan knows that life is motion, and standing still means death. Each footprint pressed into soil or snow is not just a mark of where they've been, but a symbol of their resilience. They keep moving always because the world demands it, and because somewhere just ahead might be the next chance at life. The clan trudges onward until the land forces them to halt at a rushing river swollen with meltwater from distant mountains. Its surface gleams silver under the pale sun, but the sound is a raw, thundering currents smashing against rocks, white spray leaping into the air. To cross means survival. On the other side, new hunting grounds, fresh foraging paths. To fail means cold water, broken bones, and death swept downstream. Rivers were among the most dangerous obstacles for early humans. Without bridges, rafts, or the luxury of modern gear, they relied on instinct, courage, and improvisation. The strongest waded in first, planting long wooden poles to test the depth and stability of the bottom. Children clung to their mothers wide-eyed, while elders muttered quiet prayers to unseen spirits. The clan knew this was not just water, it was a trial set by the earth itself. Mainstream historical fact: humans were already skilled travelers tens of thousands of years ago. Archaeological evidence suggests that early Homo sapiens crossed rivers and even seas to spread across continents. Some scholars argue they reached Australia more than 60,000 years ago, which would have required crossing stretches of open water by raft or primitive canoe. The idea is staggering. Imagine trusting your life to a bundle of reeds tied together, floating into the unknown. A quirky tidbit about rivers is that some early groups may have deliberately carried glowing embers in bark pouches as they crossed. Why? To ensure fire awaited them on the other side. Losing fire meant a night of shivering, so the thought of emerging wet and frozen without it was unthinkable. Picture someone yelling, "Don't drop the fire," while waist-deep in icy water. It feels absurd. Yet that ember was as valuable as life itself. Crossing is chaos. The water is icy, numbing legs instantly. Rocks are slippery. The current yanks with terrifying strength, and bodies strain to stay upright. The clan forms human chains, gripping one another's arms for stability. Children ride on parents' shoulders, shrieking at the spray, but trusting in the grip that holds them. Spears and hides are hoisted high, anything to keep them from being swept away. And still, the river claims its toll. A young hunter stumbles, slipping into the torrent. Cries erupt, and two others plunge in after him, dragging him out by his hair. He emerges, coughing, half drowned but alive. Another loses a precious bundle of dried meat snatched away by the greedy current. The loss is bitter. Days of hunting washed downstream in seconds. One controversial question remains: were rivers barriers that separated human groups, or were they highways that guided their migrations? Some scholars believe clans followed rivers for food and navigation, while others argue that rivers isolated communities, shaping unique traditions on either bank. Either way, rivers shaped the paths of survival, carving not only the land, but human destiny. When at last the clan clambers onto the far bank, dripping and exhausted, a cheer ripples through them. Relief mingles with triumph against the raw power of nature they endured. Fires are quickly lit with trembling hands, hides are spread to dry, and laughter bursts out shaky but real. Children splash in shallow pools, turning a moment of terror into play. Adults shake their heads but smile. Even in hardship, joy finds its way in. The river fades behind them, but its lesson lingers. Every crossing is a reminder of fragility of the thin line between survival and loss. Yet it also teaches unity. No one crosses alone. They survive because they hold on to one another, because the chain of hands is stronger than the pull of the current. For early humans, rivers were never just obstacles. They were test teachers, and sometimes even sacred beings raging unpredictable forces that could both nourish and destroy. To cross was not only to move forward, but to prove once again that humanity had the will to endure. The fire is more than warmth. It is a miracle cradled in flame, a fragile guardian against the cold, the dark and the teeth that lurk beyond the shadows. Early humans do not simply admire fire. They depend on it as if it were a living member of the clan. Each spark struck, each ember coaxed to life is a victory over a world that seems determined to freeze or devour them. The clan gathers around their latest blaze flames, licking high into the night air. Children hold out their hands to the glow, marveling as shadows stretch like giants on the rock walls. Adults roast strips of meat, letting fat sizzle and drip into the flames, the smell filling their noses and stirring hunger. Fire is not just a tool. It is a bond pulling people close together, uniting them in safety. Mainstream historical fact tells us that evidence of fire use stretches back at least 1 million years. Charred bones, burned stones, and blackened hearths whisper stories of early ancestors who first learned to tame flame. Yet the truth is uncertain. Did humans master fire once and pass the knowledge down? Or did they rediscover it again and again, each generation relearning what lightning volcanoes or wildfires first taught? One controversial question remains: was fire knowledge stable or fragile, constantly at risk of being lost to forgetfulness? A quirky tidbit: some archaeologists think early people might have carried embers wrapped in bark or dung during migrations, protecting them like sacred treasures. Imagine someone proudly announcing, "Look, I kept the fire alive all day in this clump of dried poop." Not glamorous, but hey, when the alternative is freezing in the dark, even dung earns respect. Yet fire is fickle. A sudden storm can douse it, leaving the clan scrambling for sparks. Flint and pyrite, when struck together, can make tiny flashes of light. But learning to coax those flashes into flame is a delicate art. Too much breath and the ember dies. Too little and it never grows. Many a night has been spent hunched over smoky twigs, frustration mounting while the cold creeps closer. But when fire is won, it transforms everything. It hardens wooden spear tips, making them deadlier against beasts. It boils water, making it safe to drink. It smokes meat, preserving it for leaner times. And most importantly, it extends the day. Around a fire, humans tell stories, sing, laugh, and whisper fears. It is not hard to imagine that language itself may have blossomed more fully in the glow of flames, when the dark pressed close and voices bound the group together. Fire is also theatre. Sparks leap like tiny stars, logs collapse into glowing embers, smoke curls upward into the black sky. For a people who live constantly on edge, fire offers rare comfort, a hypnotic dance that quiets nerves. Children fall asleep with eyelids fluttering. Adults watch the flames as if they might reveal secrets, and guards feel braver knowing the beasts beyond hesitate at the border of light. One elder, grey-haired and hunched, stirs the fire with a stick, muttering softly. To him, flame is not just heat, but spirit, a being to be respected. such beliefs are common. Across time and space, humans have often treated fire as sacred, the very breath of gods. Was this sense of reverence born in moments like these, when one more night was survived because of the blaze at their center? Likely so. Of course, accidents happen. Children sometimes throw too much wood on at once, sending sparks flying dangerously. A gust of wind might spread embers to dry grass. Fire the protector can turn destroyer in a blink. It is both savior and threat, trusted and feared at the same time. Yet the clan accepts this duality, because life without fire is unthinkable. It is the heartbeat of their survival, the sun brought down to earth, fragile yet powerful, humble yet divine. And as the flames crackle against the night, the clan knows while they can keep fire alive, hope will never truly die. The fire glows warmly, but what truly shields the clan from despair is each other. Survival is not a solo act. It is a shared performance. Early humans gathered together not only for warmth or food, but for strength in numbers. And from these gatherings, bonds are forged that will echo through human history as the first stirrings of society. At dawn, when hunters set out, they do not go alone. 2, 3, sometimes more move as one, scanning for tracks, sharing burdens. At the camp, others remain behind, tending children, weaving nets, scraping hides, or sharpening tools. Each person has a role, and though the tasks differ, all are essential. One controversial question remains: was this division of labor based purely on strength and age, or did groups already begin to experiment with roles shaped by skill preference, or even personality? Anthropologists still debate. Mainstream historical fact supports that cooperation was a survival trait. Fossil evidence of injured individuals who lived long after debilitating accidents suggests that their clans cared for them, feeding and protecting them when they could no longer hunt. Without such care, survival would have been impossible. These discoveries prove that early humans were not just rugged survivalists. They were caretakers, builders of community capable of compassion, even when resources were scarce. There are quirky details too. Some researchers believe laughter and singing were as vital as spears and hides. Group singing, they argue, synchronized breathing and heart rates, boosting unity. Imagine a cold night when bellies grumble and wolves howl beyond the firelight. Someone begins a chant, others join, and soon the camp is vibrating with rhythm. It doesn't just chase fear away. It knits the group together like thread through cloth. Honestly, it's not so different from belting out a cheesy song at karaoke today, silly in the moment, but deeply bonding. Children play their part as well. Though small and fragile, their games sharpen reflexes, teaching them to throw stones, to mimic hunters, to role-play the chase of a hare. Their laughter cuts through the harshness of camp life, reminding adults what they are fighting for. A single child's giggle can lift the weight of hunger, if only for a heartbeat. At mealtime, whatever food has been gathered is shared. True arguments spark. One hunter might insist he deserves more meat for his efforts, but the unwritten rule is clear: without sharing or starve. Even the smallest scraps of marrow are divided, sometimes licked clean by many tongues, before bones are tossed aside. This rhythm of give and take is survival disguised as generosity, but it plants the seeds of what we recognize as fairness. There are rituals too primitive but meaningful. Before a hunt, some clans rub ash on their faces or paint with red ochre, believing it strengthens courage. After a successful kill, they may dance around the fire, stamping feet, raising spears, voices rising into the night. Is it just celebration, or does it edge toward belief, toward the first whispers of religion born from the need to make sense of survival's constant gamble? And through it all, storytelling weaves its magic. Elders describe hunts of long ago, close calls with predators, rivers crossed, fires lost and rekindled. These tales are not just entertainment. They are lessons, warnings, maps of memory wrapped in drama. A child listening learns where to find water, which plants cure wounds, and what mistakes cost lives. One could argue that these stories are the first textbooks the fire circle their classroom. Humor slips in too. A clumsy hunter mocked for tripping into a stream, a child's exaggerated impression of a bear, even a joke about how tough the roots taste tonight. These moments seem trivial, but in a world that demands so much, they are vital. They lighten the load, reminding the clan that life is more than endless toil. So when early humans gather, it is more than necessity, it is identity. Around the fire, with shared laughter tasks, divided and stories told, they are more than individuals scraping by. They are a people united by blood, by effort, by hope. And in that unity lies the secret to why humanity endured, when so many other creatures did not. The land changes, and with it, so do the trials. Some days bring bitter cold winds like knives that slice through every seam of fur and hide. Other days, blistering heat bakes the ground, until footsteps raise clouds of dust and tongues dry against parched mouths. For early humans, there was no comfort zone, no thermostat to adjust only the raw and unyielding extremes of nature. Ice ages descended with glaciers grinding across the land, swallowing valleys and forests, reshaping the world into frozen deserts. The clan trudges along ridges of ice, the sun barely peeking through grey skies, the air so thin it burns the lungs. They huddle together, fur-wrapped and shivering, moving slowly through landscapes where nothing grows. Their only companions are the deep cracks echoing from shifting glaciers, and the distant silhouettes of woolly mammoths, colossal but rare, grazing against the endless white. Mainstream historical fact reminds us that Earth's climate swung wildly during prehistory. Massive ice ages were punctuated by brief, warmer interludes, forcing humans to adapt constantly. This unpredictability shaped everything: when to move, what to eat, how to build shelters, and even which animals could be hunted. It was a never-ending test, one that rewarded flexibility over stubbornness. A quirky tidbit: some scholars believe Neanderthals may have developed wide, stocky builds, not just by chance, but as a direct adaptation to cold climates. Shorter limbs and barrel chests retained heat better. Imagine early humans debating, sure, he's built like a tree stump, but he never freezes. Evolution had a sense of humor, if nothing else. Heat brought its own torments. In warmer eras, or in regions scorched by drought, rivers shrank into cracked earth, plants wilted, and animals fled to distant watering holes. Under the burning sunskins, blistered lips cracked, and thirst gnawed even worse than hunger. The clan learned to follow the stars, to dig for hidden springs, to chew roots that held droplets of water. And still arguments flared who would drink first when only a little could be found. One controversial question remains: was climate the true driver of human migration? Many anthropologists argue that shifting environments pushed humans out of Africa into Asia and across Europe. Others suggest human restlessness, curiosity, or even conflict with rival groups played equal roles. Perhaps it was both a mixture of necessity and boldness, of hunger and hope. Adaptation became not just a skill, but a way of life. In cold seasons, hides were layered thick fire pits, dug deeper shelters sealed tighter. In heat clothing, thin shade was sought, and foraging shifted to cactus fruits or tubers. Survival meant flexibility, a constant willingness to try something new. If one method failed, another was tested. Stubbornness was punished swiftly by nature, but creativity was rewarded with life. The children, though fragile, became resilient by necessity. They learned early to distinguish frostbitten fingers to shade their eyes from blinding snow, to walk barefoot across scorching sand without complaint. Their games mirrored reality, building tiny snow shelters in winter, digging miniature wells in summer. Even in play, they rehearsed the lessons of endurance. There were moments of awe too. The shimmering dance of auroras across frozen skies, or the glitter of stars above desert plains, stirred something deeper in the human spirit. Even amid suffering, beauty could silence hunger and soften fear. Perhaps these wonders, glimpsed in extremes, planted the first seeds of curiosity about the world, a drive that went beyond simple survival. The harsh climates left scars on the body, but they also etched resilience into the soul. Each ice storm, each drought, each sudden flood hammered humans into tougher beings, shaping not only their tools and shelters, but their very outlook. To live meant to adapt, and to adapt meant to imagine a way forward, no matter how impossible the odds seemed. The hunger of the clan can no longer be answered by roots and berries alone. Now the eyes of every hunter are set on the giants of the plains, mammoths, bison, aurochs, and deer. These animals are both promise and peril, vast walking larders wrapped in muscle, hide, and bone. To hunt them is to gamble with life itself, but the reward could feed the entire band for weeks. At dawn, hunters gather at the edge of a valley where mammoths graze. Their breath hangs heavy in the cold air, mingling with the distant trumpeting of the herd. Spears are checked, their flint tips sharp and deadly. Wooden shafts are weighed in hand, balanced for throwing. Nets, crude but functional, are rolled tightly. The plan is whispered in low voices, surround, confuse, and drive the beast toward a pit dug days earlier, hidden beneath branches and snow. Mainstream historical fact tells us that humans developed cooperative hunting strategies tens of thousands of years ago. Archaeological sites reveal piles of mammoth bones and ancient kill pits, proof of cunning teamwork. A single human could never bring down such a beast, but many acting together, coordinated and disciplined, stood a chance. Hunting was humanity's first orchestra, with every movement tuned to survival. A quirky tidbit: some evidence suggests early humans may have used fire or loud noises to drive animals. Picture a ragtag band of hunters banging stones together, yelling at the top of their lungs and waving torches at a confused mammoth. It sounds almost comical, but it worked. The chaos unsettled the animals, breaking their confidence and forcing them into dangerous positions. Who needs drums and trumpets when you have half-starved hunters making a ruckus? The chase is brutal. Hunters sprint across uneven ground, hearts pounding, legs burning. Spears fly through the air, some striking, others missing. A mammoth bellows in rage, swinging its tusks like scythes, scattering hunters in every direction. Fear is real. One misstep could mean being trampled into the earth. And yet they press on. Hunger drives courage where reason would advise retreat. Children and elders wait anxiously at campiers, straining for sounds of return. They tend small fires, prepare water, and sharpen knives. When the hunters finally emerge, dragging haunches of meat or triumphantly hauling hides, cries of joy erupt. The smell of roasting flesh fills the air, a feast, not just of food, but of relief. Tonight stomachs will be full and spirits will soar. But not every hunt ends in triumph. Sometimes the mammoth escapes spears, shattering against its thick hide. Sometimes hunters are gored or crushed, their bravery answered with silence and grief. One controversial question remains: were the risks of such hunts always worth the reward, or did humans sometimes push too far, driven by desperation rather than strategy? The debate continues, but the truth may be that they had no choice. Starvation was as deadly as tusks, The meat is precious, but nothing is wasted. Fat is rendered into fuel hide scraped and sewn into clothing bones carved into tools. Even tendons become thread-binding weapons and garments. In a sense, every animal killed becomes part of the clan woven into their daily survival. And with each successful hunt, humans learn a little more about patience, cooperation, and ingenuity. Still, there is always the next hunger waiting, the next chase, the next roll of dice against nature's giants. Each hunt is both victory and reminder. Life hangs by a thread, held fast only by courage, unity, and the sharp edge of flint. The hunt may bring food, but the question of where to rest remains ever present. Early humans cannot simply pitch a tent or book a hotel. They must wrest safety out of a landscape that often feels like it wants to kill them. And so they turn to stone wood and hide building shelters that are both fragile and miraculous sanctuaries, where the clan can gather and breathe easier if only for a little while. Caves are the first refuge. Their mouths yawn wide, dark, and intimidating. But within lies protection from wind rain and prowling predators. A cave with a dry floor and steady airflow is worth fighting for. Mainstream historical fact shows that Neanderthals and Homo sapiens alike used caves extensively, leaving behind hearts, carvings, and painted walls that whisper across time. But caves were not always safe. Sometimes a bear or lion claimed them first, and entering meant a gamble between shelter and death. A quirky tidbit is that in some caves, researchers found layers of burned bone and ash, suggesting repeated use of the same fire pits over generations. Imagine returning to a cave your ancestors once used, kneeling before the same blackened stones, feeding the same flame. It's as if the shelter itself became part of the family, a silent witness to survival. But caves were not always available. When none could be found, the clan built their own. Branches bent into frames covered with hides formed crude huts that held against rain and wind. Sometimes bones of mammoth tusks arched and rib cages planted upright were used as frameworks draped with thick skins. To stumble upon such a camp must have been eerie, an entire village of huts made from the bodies of giants. Honestly, it sounds like a prehistoric horror movie set, but to them, it was ingenious recycling. One controversial question remains: did early humans prefer caves because they were safer, or did they actually shape their lives around building mobile shelters? Some archaeologists argue that reliance on caves is exaggerated by modern discoveries, since stone preserves better than wood or hide. The truth may be that many groups were skilled at erecting temporary camps, leaving little behind for us to find. Inside these shelters, life is still harsh, but there is a sense of intimacy. Fires glow warmly, smoke curling upward through gaps. Families huddle together, children playing with pebbles or bones, elders muttering softly. Outside storms rage or predators stalk, but within there is a bubble of humanity, a place to laugh, argue, sing, and sleep without fear of the sky falling directly on their heads. Even the arrangement of shelters tells a story. Some sites suggest circular layouts with hearths at the center and huts forming a protective ring. This design echoes the instinct to gather close to protect the vulnerable by surrounding them. It is the architectural fingerprint of community etched into the earth long before cities rose. At times, shelter is not only for safety, but for meaning. Painted hands and animal figures on cave walls may have been more than art. They could have been prayers, rituals, or simple attempts to claim a place as theirs. To paint a bison on the wall is to say, we were here, we belong here. Perhaps even then, humans longed to leave marks that outlasted the fire's ashes. Of course, these shelters were never permanent. Fires left soot-stained hides, grew brittle wood, collapsed, and eventually the clan would move on. Yet each shelter left behind was another step in humanity's growing ability to shape the environment. From caves to huts, from mammoth bone homes to stone circles, the instinct to build a haven has been with us since the beginning. And when the storm outside howls or the night brings glowing eyes at the edge of the firelight, the clan rests beneath their crude roofs, knowing they have carved a small piece of safety out of a vast, unforgiving world. Even within the relative safety of a cave or hide shelter, the threat of injury hovers like a shadow. Survival is not only about finding food and warmth, but also about enduring what the wilderness inflicts upon fragile bodies. One slip on icy rocks, one bite from a predator, one careless swing of a flint blade, and a wound could turn from inconvenience to catastrophe. Imagine a hunter stumbling as he chases a deer-sharp stone slicing into his leg. Blood stains the snow, the wound burns and throbs, and suddenly the question is not about tomorrow's meal, but whether infection will take his life. For early humans, medicine did not exist as we know it. There were no antiseptics, no antibiotics, just instinct observation and desperate creativity. Mainstream historical fact reminds us that fossilized skeletons have revealed remarkable resilience. Some individuals survived broken bones, tooth loss, and serious injuries for years, which would have been impossible without care from others. These discoveries prove that early humans tended their wounded, sharing food and protection until they recovered. This compassion, though costly, was essential for keeping groups strong. One quirky tidbit: some researchers believe honey may have been one of the first medicines. Honey's natural antibacterial properties could soothe wounds and keep infection at bay. Picture an early human carefully smearing sticky sweetness over a gash. Not exactly glamorous, but surprisingly effective. And you thought honey was just for tea. Herbs too became allies. Bitter roots eased stomach pain, crushed leaves soothed swelling, and smoke from certain plants calmed breathing. How did they learn these tricks? Likely through trial and error, observing what animals ate or experimenting cautiously. One controversial question remains: did early humans develop a rudimentary system of herbal medicine, or was healing mostly accidental luck, passed along as stories? The debate continues, but the evidence leans toward deliberate knowledge. Rituals often accompanied treatment. A shaman-like figure, perhaps the elder with the sharpest memory, might chant or paint symbols over wounds. To modern eyes, it looks like superstition, but belief itself had power. Confidence in healing could soothe anxiety and reduce stress, often made the difference between recovery and decline. Sometimes the mind was medicine even when the body struggled. Yet not every wound could be healed. Infection spread silently, fevers raged, and many lives ended too soon. Children especially were vulnerable. Falls, burns, and illness cut through young lives with merciless frequency. Each death carved grief deep into the clan, teaching them lessons at a brutal cost. But each survival was celebrated as a triumph, proof that knowledge was growing, that tomorrow might hold better chances. Bones were also tools of instruction. A healed fracture showed the younger generation what endurance looked like. See this scar? That is how we learn to carry spears differently. In a way, every injury was not only a wound, but a story woven into the collective memory of the group. Despite the pain and loss, life persisted. Humans learned to slow down for the injured, to adapt tasks so the weak could still contribute. A man who could no longer hunt might carve tools. A woman too frail to forage might teach children stories. Survival was never about perfection. It was about adjustment, weaving everyone into the fabric of endurance. And when night fell and someone lay feverish by the fire, the clan gathered close, humming, softly, sharing warmth, hoping their presence alone might hold back death. In such moments, survival became more than physical. It became emotional, a quiet resilience born not just of sharp tools and clever ideas, but of the simple act of caring. Not all dangers came from beasts or storms. Sometimes the greatest threat wore the same face, human. Rival tribes roamed the same valleys, seeking food, water, and shelter, and when paths crossed, sparks of conflict often flared. For early humans, territory was not marked with fences or flags, but with survival itself. To lose land meant to lose life. Picture a band of hunters trudging wearily into a valley, only to find smoke already curling from a distant fire. Another group has arrived. The air thickens with tension. Eyes narrow, spears are gripped tighter, and whispers spread through the camp. Do they risk approaching? Do they withdraw? Or do they prepare for battle? Mainstream historical fact suggests that violence between human groups stretches deep into prehistory. Archaeologists have uncovered skeletons scarred with arrow points, blunt force trauma, and even mass graves hinting at ambushes. Conflict over scarce resources was inevitable, yet not every meeting ended in bloodshed. Sometimes rival groups exchanged goodsmates or knowledge, proving that humans were capable of both war and peace long before cities rose. A quirky tidbit: there is evidence that Neanderthals and Homo sapiens not only clashed, but occasionally cooperated and even interbred. Imagine two groups glaring at one another across a river, only for someone to say, "Well, he's kind of handsome." Survival has strange ways of softening rivalries. Without such unions, many of us today might not exist. Encounters varied. Some escalated quickly, raids at night, spears clashing in chaos, screams echoing across hillsides. Others unfolded cautiously. Two groups might circle warily, calling out in strange sounds, offering gestures with open hands. Perhaps a gift of dried meat was placed on the ground as a peace token. The outcome often depended on hunger levels. Well-fed clans leaned toward peace. Starving ones leaned toward violence. One controversial question remains: did humans inherit an instinct for violence, or was it born purely of desperate necessity? Some scholars argue that competition drove evolution, shaping us into strategic fighters. Others insist cooperation was the truer engine of survival. The truth may lie somewhere in between, a blend of conflict and alliance that forged humanity's path. Children shielded behind adults peeked wide-eyed at strangers, their first glimpse of others who looked both familiar and different. The experience could inspire fear, curiosity, or awe. Perhaps from these encounters grew the first sparks of cultural identity, the sense of us and them. Stories around the fire kept memories of conflict alive. Elders told of raids endured, of victories, one of hunters who fell defending the clan. These tales were both warnings and rallying cries, shaping the younger generation's views of courage, loyalty, and caution. And yet, alongside these stories of exchanges of a tool traded for food, of peace carved out in the shadow of hunger, also survived reminders that conflict was not the only path. The weight of rivalry etched itself into daily life. Camps were chosen with watchfulness in mind. Scouts were sent to the edges of valleys, and the clan learned to read smoke on the horizon like a sign of approaching storm. Even in sleep, the threat of human enemies lurked, as unsettling as the glow of predator eyes. But perhaps the greatest legacy of these clashes was not the blood spilled, but the strategies born. Humans learned to coordinate not just hunts, but defenses. They learned to read faces, anticipate movements, and gauge intentions. From rivalry, they gained sharper minds, more cunning plans, and a deeper awareness of the fragile balance between war and peace. So when rival tribes appeared on the horizon, the clan felt both dread and possibility. Each meeting was a coin-toss conflict or alliance loss or survival. And in that tension lay one of the greatest lessons of prehistory. Sometimes danger wears the shape of your neighbor. The land is never constant. One season it offers sheltering valleys and flowing rivers, the next it dries to dust or freezes solid beneath endless snow. When the earth shifts, so must the clan. Migration becomes not a choice, but a law of existence written into the very rhythm of survival. Step by step, early humans push across continents carried by hunger, hope, and the relentless pull of changing climates. The signs come slowly. At first, herds of bison wander farther. Berry bushes fail to ripen streams thin, until only mud remains at their bottoms. Hunger sharpens the decision. Elders recall trails from their youth, mountains crossed valleys that once flourished, rivers that never dried. These stories are not idle memories, but maps guiding the younger generation toward possible salvation. Mainstream historical fact tells us that human migrations were vast and astonishing. From Africa, early Homo sapiens spread across Asia, into Europe, and eventually into Australia and the Americas. They walked thousands of miles, following shifting game and seeking water. It's mind-bending to imagine families carrying infants, fire, and tools across landscapes that today take airplanes to traverse. Yet they did so barefoot, with only instinct and memory. A quirky tidbit: some groups may have used seashells carried from distant shores as talismans during migrations, objects of beauty and comfort, linking them to places long left behind. Imagine trudging across endless grasslands and pulling out a tiny shell from your pouch, a reminder of waves once lapping at your toes. Even in survival, humans clung to symbols of belonging. The trek is grueling. Feet crack and blister, children cry from exhaustion. Elders lag behind. The clan must decide: slow down and risk starvation, or press forward and risk losing the weakest. Such choices tear at the heart. Sometimes ingenuity saves them: sleds dragged on hides carrying those who cannot walk. Water stored in animal bladders rationed carefully. One controversial question remains: did migration stem purely from necessity, hunger, drought, predators? Or was there also curiosity, a restless spark urging humans to explore? Anthropologists debate, and perhaps the truth lies in both. Necessity forced the first steps, but wonder pushed them farther than survival alone required. The landscapes change dramatically. The clan trudges through deserts where the sun blisters skin, and every breath feels like inhaling fire. Later, they shiver in snowy passes where avalanches rumble, and every step risks slipping into icy oblivion. Still, they press forward. Each hardship teaches new lessons: how to find hidden springs, how to dig snow caves for warmth, how to follow migrating birds to discover fertile ground. Children absorb these lessons as they walk, turning complaints into games. They count steps, name landmarks, chase insects, or sing to distract from hunger. Their resilience is astonishing, and their laughter, when it comes, is like sunlight piercing storm clouds. For the adults, such moments remind them why they keep moving. Nights on the migration trail are haunting and beautiful. The stars blaze brilliantly above, unpolluted by modern lights, guiding the clan with their constellations. Some believe the patterns in the sky are ancestors, watching spirits lighting the way. Around the fire, stories turn to promises of green valleys ahead of rivers teeming with fish, of places where life may finally grow easier. Migration is not just movement, it is transformation. Each mile walked strips away weakness and shapes humans into beings of endurance. Every river crossed, every mountain climbed, every desert endured adds to the inheritance of survival passed down to children. and in their weary footsteps echo the first rhythms of humanity's journey across the world. When the clan finally pauses from their endless walking, they gather not only to rest, but to reflect. Around the fire beneath the starry sky, voices soften and words take on a different weight. It is here that the first spiritual whispers begin, rituals and symbols born from the human need to explain to hope and to find meaning in a world that so often feels cruel. The night is hushed. A mammoth hunt has ended successfully, and the clan is full, their bellies heavy with meat. Children drift towards sleep, but the elders stay awake, gazing at the flames as if they could see something beyond. One of them rises slowly, picks up a piece of ochre, and draws a simple shape on the wall of a nearby cave. A bison, broad and strong. The clan watches silent. To them, this is not just art. It is an offering, a hope that the spirit of the bison will return again to their spears. Mainstream historical fact supports this picture. Archaeologists have found cave paintings in places like Chauvet and Lascaux, tens of thousands of years old, depicting animals in remarkable detail. Scholars still debate why they were made. Were they decorations, lessons for children, or something deeper, prayers for a successful hunt, or tributes to the creatures they depended on? A quirky tidbit: in some caves, outlines of hands were painted by blowing pigment through hollow bones, leaving ghostly prints across the walls. Imagine the mischief of a child pressing their hand to the rock, puffing ochre, then proudly declaring, "Look, my hand will stay here forever." It's strangely touching prehistoric graffiti, claiming identity against the void of time. Rituals go beyond paintings. When a hunter dies, his body is carefully placed in the earth, perhaps covered with red ochre, perhaps with tools beside him. The act suggests something astonishing. Early humans may have believed in an afterlife. Why else prepare the dead for journeys beyond? One controversial question remains: did humans of this age truly believe in spirits and gods? Or was it a simpler instinct to treat the dead with dignity born of grief and memory? Stories grow richer around the fire. Shadows on the cave wall dance as voices weave tales of giant beasts of storms caused by angry spirits of ancestors watching from the sky. Fear of predators becomes myth, and gratitude for food becomes prayer. Even children listen wide-eyed, absorbing not only survival knowledge, but also a sense of belonging to something greater than themselves. Music joins the rituals. A bone flute, simple but clear, echoes softly in the cave. Others clap or hum in rhythm. The sound rises, filling the night with something that is not survival, but celebration. Music binds the clan as tightly as shared meals, giving them a heartbeat beyond the physical. Scholars point out that rhythm and song likely served as tools for unity, synchronizing movement in hunts, or simply reminding everyone that they were not alone. There are lighter moments too. Imagine someone dramatically imitating a mammoth, with arms outstretched, children squealing with laughter while adults tease the clumsy giant. Humor once again slips into ritual, proving that spirituality and play were never far apart. The spiritual whispers of early humans are fragile but profound. They turn the random cruelty of weather, hunger, and death into something that feels purposeful. They offer comfort that the dead are not lost, that tomorrow may bring luck if today is honored, that unseen forces might be persuaded with song or paint. These whispers are the first roots of religion, the quiet seeds of belief that would someday grow into temples, myths, and entire civilizations. For now, the clan sits close, firelight on their faces, stories and songs carrying them through the night. Their world is still harsh, but in these moments they create a different kind of survival, one not of the body, but of the soul. The firelight flickers against tired faces, and in its glow, the most fragile figures are always at the center, mothers and children. If survival is difficult for hunters braving the cold, it is doubly so for those bringing new life into the world. Childbirth in these times is raw, dangerous, and uncertain. Every cry of a newborn is both a triumph and a gamble, for life begins already balancing on a knife's edge. A young woman labors in the corner of a shelter, knees bent, hands clutching another's for strength. There are no doctors, no clean linens, only warmth from the fire, reassurance from experienced mothers, and perhaps herbs chewed and spit into her mouth to dull the pain. When the baby emerges slippery and wailing relief floods the camp. But the struggle is not over. Infection, bleeding, or weakness could steal either mother or child. Survival in birth is a battle of its own. Mainstream historical fact tells us that infant mortality rates in prehistoric times were staggeringly high. Many children never reached their first birthday, and mothers often perished in childbirth. Yet the persistence of humanity proves that enough survived thanks to community support and careful care. Fossil evidence even suggests that young mothers sometimes gave birth with the assistance of older women, perhaps the first midwives in history. A quirky tidbit: archaeologists have discovered tiny footprints fossilized beside larger ones preserved in mud hardened by time. These prints, likely left by children, are some of the most poignant relics. We have a silent reminder that even in harsh worlds, little ones ran, played, and left their marks. Imagine the pride of a mother pointing at those prints and saying, "That's my child," not knowing the traces would last for tens of thousands of years. Life with children was never easy. Babies needed constant feeding, and without farming, mothers nursed for years, often carrying infants strapped against their chests while foraging or walking miles in migration. Toddlers stumbled into fires or wandered too close to rivers, and every adult in the clan became a watchful guardian. Childhood was short by 6 or 7 children. Were already helping gather wood, fetch water, or learn the beginnings of the hunt. One controversial question remains: did prehistoric parents feel the same depth of emotional attachment we recognize today, or did frequent loss harden them into acceptance? Some scholars argue grief was just as profound as ours, while others suggest resilience required a certain emotional distance. Perhaps it was both love as fierce as the fire, but tempered by the reality that it could be snuffed out at any moment. Still, joy found its way in. Children laughed, played chase in the grass, splashed in rivers, or imitated adults sharpening tools. Their games were not frivolous, but preparation for survival. Throwing stones trained their arms, pretending to hunt, sharpened their eyes, climbing rocks, strengthened their balance. Laughter echoed across valleys, a sound as vital to the clan as the crackle of fire. Mothers carried more than infants. They carried knowledge how to prepare plants which berries healed and which killed, how to weave hides into carriers, how to soothe fevers. They whispered songs into small ears, teaching rhythm and memory long before language was written. In this way, survival was passed down not just through tools and hunts, but through lullabies and touch. In the harshest times, when food ran thin and sickness spread, mothers often ate less so their children might have more. That selflessness, invisible in fossil records, is part of why humanity endured. The quiet sacrifices of women, rarely celebrated in the grand narratives of survival, were in truth the hidden backbone of the species' persistence. So in the firelit shelter, as a newborn curls against its mother's chest, the clan feels hope stir. Fragile as the infant is, its cry cuts through hunger and fear, a reminder that life insists on continuing. For every storm survived, for every predator kept at bay, for every sacrifice endured. The greatest reward is this: another heartbeat, another chance for the story to go on. The clan survives not only by muscle or instinct, but by something far more enduring: memory. Knowledge is their inheritance, carried not in books or scrolls, but in stories, gestures, and lessons repeated until even the youngest can echo them. To forget is to die, but to remember is to carry the wisdom of countless generations into the uncertain dawn. At the heart of camp, an elder squats by the fire, chipping flint with careful precision. Children gather close, wide-eyed as sparks leap with each strike. He shows them how to angle the stone, how to feel for the hidden blade inside the rock. His hands are scarred, his movements slow, but his voice is steady. This edge will cut hide. This one will scrape meat. Do it wrong and you'll bleed. The lesson is clear, the stakes higher than any classroom today. Mainstream historical fact shows us that oral tradition knowledge passed by word of mouth was the backbone of prehistoric life. Everything from hunting techniques to herbal remedies, from star patterns to migration paths, was taught through repetition. Without writing, memory was the library, and elders were its guardians. A quirky tidbit: some archaeologists suggest that rhythm and rhyme may have been used to help remember survival knowledge. Imagine early humans chanting in sing-song, "Red berries, kill blackberries," fill a prehistoric jingle as catchy as a commercial. If you think modern advertising sticks in your head, imagine being stuck with survival slogans your whole life. But it worked. The rhyme kept knowledge alive. Around the fire, stories bloom into something larger than instructions. A tale about the time a hunter slipped into a river becomes both a warning about slick rocks and a comedy retold for laughs. A memory of a great hunt grows into legend, shaping children's ideas of bravery. One controversial question remains: where is the line between history and myth in these retellings? Did stories preserve facts, or did they drift into fables? Perhaps both truth and imagination mingling like smoke and flame. Everyday acts become lessons. A mother teaching her child to weave a basket also teaches patience. A hunter guiding a teenager's hand on a spear also teaches courage. A healer showing how to crush leaves into paste teaches not only medicine but curiosity. Each moment is layered with meaning, ensuring that knowledge flows forward like a river. The clan also learns from failure. A spoiled piece of meat, a collapsed shelter, a missed throw of a spear. Each mistake becomes part of the group's collective wisdom. Children here remember what happened when we ignored the storm clouds, or don't step where your uncle did unless you want a broken ankle. Memory, sometimes harsh, becomes the teacher that never leaves. There is comfort in this inheritance. Around the fire, young ones mimic the voices of elders retelling stories with laughter. The adults let them because this is practice. To carry memory is to carry survival. The moment a child can repeat a lesson back is a moment of triumph, as important as catching their first fish or striking their first spark. And so knowledge becomes the one treasure that cannot be lost to storms or predators. Tools break, fires die, shelters collapse, but wisdom lives as long as tongues can speak and ears can listen. Each generation builds upon the last, weaving a tapestry of survival that grows stronger with every passing season. In these fragile yet powerful exchanges lies the true strength of humanity. Muscles fade, tools dull, and even fire can be lost. But the stories, the lessons, the shared memory of how to endure will always carry the clan forward into whatever world awaits them next. The echoes of survival stretch far beyond the flicker of a single fire. Each hardship endured, each wound healed, each river crossed, each storm weathered builds towards something greater than the clan itself. In the quiet rhythm of footsteps across continents, early humans unknowingly carved the first path towards civilization. Their harsh survival is not just about living another day. It is about leaving a legacy written in bone fire and memory. At dawn, the clan rises once more. Children tug at hides stiff with frost mothers' pack tools and scraps of dried meat hunters' shoulder spears. The cycle repeats hunger, danger, laughter, exhaustion. Yet beneath it all hums a deeper truth. This struggle binds them together, gives them resilience sharper than flint. Every lesson learned is carried forward, shaping the next generation and the next. Mainstream historical fact reminds us that without these survival strategies, humanity would never have spread so widely or endured so long. The adaptability of our ancestors to eat anything, to make tools from stone, to find shelter in caves or huts, laid the foundation for the societies that followed. Agriculture, cities, even technology all rest on the stubborn endurance of those who first faced the wild. A quirky tidbit, some scholars think the very act of walking shaped human culture. Endless migration may have made storytelling natural after all, when you're trudging for miles. What else do you do but talk, joke, or sing? Maybe civilization itself was built on the simple boredom of long walks. Imagine the first road trip games being invented somewhere on a grassy plain 50,000 years ago. One controversial question remains: was survival itself enough to explain humanity's rise? Or was there something unique, an extra spark of imagination or cooperation that set us apart? Could Neanderthals, Denisovans, or other early humans have taken our place if luck or circumstance had shifted slightly? Scholars debate, but perhaps what truly mattered was persistence, the refusal to give up, even when every force of nature screamed that survival was impossible. The clan does not think of legacy. They think only of tonight's fire, tomorrow's hunt, the safety of their children. And yet, their actions ripple forward. Each footprint pressed into mud, each handprint blown onto cave walls, each ember carried across rivers is a thread in humanity's great story. Without them, we would not be here. Night falls and the fire glows once more. The clan gathers close bellies, neither full nor empty hearts, weary but hopeful. A child laughs, an elder hums, and for a moment the harshness of survival softens. They do not know it, but in these fragile acts, laughter, song, memory, they are planting the seeds of something far greater than survival. They are planting the seeds of civilization itself. And now, as you lie in your own quiet shelter, perhaps with a blanket tucked close and warmth all around, imagine their world. Harsh, yes, but also filled with the same hopes, the same fears, the same need to endure that lives in us today. Humanity has always been fragile and yet somehow always unbreakable. So now, dear listener, the story begins to fade, softening like the last glow of embers in a long, dark night. We've walked with those first humans across ice and desert, watched them coax sparks into flame, heard their laughter mingle with the howls of predators, and felt their hunger gnaw at our own bellies. Through their eyes we saw the vastness of a world both hostile and beautiful, where each dawn was a triumph and each night a gamble. But here, in this gentle moment, let the harshness drift away. Imagine the fire no longer as a desperate shield, but as a warm and steady glow crackling softly in a cave where the wind cannot reach. Outside, the stars stretch endlessly, calm and silent, their light unchanged since those ancient nights. The clan is asleep now, breathing slowly. Children curled against mothers, elders wrapped in hides, the watchman's eyes growing heavy, but comforted by the flame. Let yourself feel their peace, however fleeting it might have been. The danger of the hunt, the fear of predators, the exhaustion of endless walking, all of it softens now, dissolving into the stillness of memory. What remains is only the warmth, the closeness, the shared strength of people who would not give up. And as you breathe slowly, perhaps you can sense how their resilience flows through you too. Every heartbeat you carry is an echo of theirs, every breath a continuation of the story they began. You are connected to them not just by blood or history, but by the same quiet will to endure, to hope, to dream of tomorrow, even when tonight feels endless. So close your eyes a little deeper. Feel the weight of the blanket, the quiet of your room, the steady rhythm of your breath. Let the world soften around you the way the stars soften the darkness for our ancestors. You are safe, you are warm, and you are part of a story that has always been about survival and always will be about life. Sleep now, gently, peacefully carried by echoes of firelight.